So the next version of DMZ has been revealed by Infinity Ward as part of Modern Warfare 4. I can't even hide my excitement at this point. In this video today, I want to discuss some things with you that I hope this new version of DMZ will include. We all know DMZ as it currently exists today can still be a truly incredible experience, but I think we all know it's missing some core features. I put out a tweet the other day with a couple of elements that I think a future DMZ mode would need to succeed, and we're going to talk about those. But for those who don't already know the new details, here's what's coming in the next version of DMZ as described by Activision. DMZ is the definitive Call of Duty extraction experience, a living sandbox where every deployment is a new story. Set across a large-scale conflict zone, DMZ is built both for structured missions and emergent gameplay, where players can loot, fight, negotiate, betray, and extract with whatever they can carry. Deploy solo or within a squad into a volatile, living combat zone as an off-the-books asset tasked with recovering advanced military technology left in the wake of war. DMZ returns transformed from its beta, building on that foundation to deliver a deeper, more complete extraction experience shaped by player feedback and new systems. With a living world, the conditions in the exclusion zone are always shifting, with changing weather, dynamic military objectives, and hostile forces moving throughout the zone. Now, these high-level details will be expanded upon in the near future, June 7th, as part of the Xbox Games Showcase. However, there is one element that the community appears to have already worked out, thanks to a little bit of help from Infinity Ward themselves. A tweet from the IW account on reveal day showed off the new DMZ logo, which I think looks sick by the way, and seemingly confirmed the location of the mode, Hyjin. This tweet reads, "The winds are shifting in Hyjin, will deny you were ever there." This fits nicely with the current DMZ mode. You'll be familiar with some of the announcer voiceovers from the current DMZ that alludes to high winds in the conflict zone. And the city of Hyjin is actually going to be an important location in Modern Warfare 4 single player, being the first place that we see North Korea invade the South. Also, as part of a dev blog released when Modern Warfare 4 was revealed a couple of days ago, a small shot lingers on a developer's screen and it reveals an image of a large map. This map is named Tumen, which was a name that appeared in a small leak last year as a code name for DMZ. From the image that we've got here, you can see lots of different regions or sections all split up on the map, and there are areas of water that weave in between them, although the image is quite blurry, so we can't really make out much more than that. I wouldn't be surprised if on June 7th, we see Hyjin featured heavily in more details for Modern Warfare 4. Not just for DMZ, but potentially the multiplayer and single player as well. So great work to the community for finding this reference. Okay, so that's the official information that I can reveal today. And now on to this tweet that I posted the other day where I listed a few things that I'd love to see stay in a future version of DMZ and a couple of things that I think the mode needs to add. So first of all, I want them to keep that proper social experience with prox chat and multiple enemy teams. This is something that DMZ currently checks the box for, and even back when it first launched in 2022, it kind of nailed without even realizing what it had done at first. DMZ is basically a social sandbox where you can loot up, you can fight AI and real player enemies, you can talk to those other real players and you can negotiate with them, potentially working out a deal to keep each other alive, maybe even team up with some assimilation. Or things can go south. You might be talking and suddenly somebody pulls the trigger and the entire scenario goes up in smoke. This social element, I believe, was a core fundamental reason as to why DMZ grew so popular through those first few seasons of Modern Warfare 2, and why now, even 3.5 years later, the game still has a dedicated core audience. Other extraction shooters that have come along in the meantime, games like Arc Raiders, have lent into this social aspect as well, and it's created some incredible emergent gameplay moments that can only really happen with the right kind of social tools. Proximity chat is massive for this, giving opposing players a way to talk to one another and figure out solutions to in-game scenarios, whether that's helping someone complete a mission or just trash-talking your enemy so that your teammate can flank their position and point a sniper rifle right at the back of their head. The next version of DMZ needs to continue with what the current DMZ did so well, letting the player control the narrative within each raid. Based on the limited information that we got from Call of Duty the other day, it seems like that's exactly what we're going to be getting. They're describing DMZ as a living sandbox built for structured missions and emergent gameplay. That, to me, signals that the team working on it saw what worked so well in the first iteration of DMZ and is determined to see that happen again this time around. In my tweet, I also mentioned how Al Mazrah is an elite tier map. It is absolutely amazing. And the physical extractions via the exfil choppers were goated. Still to this day, I don't think another extraction shooter has actually beaten DMZ in their implementation of the actual extractions from the map. I still remember being at COD Next 2022 and getting a chance to play DMZ there for the first time. Cold introduction, no idea what I was doing. But the thrill of working out that you needed to hop on that exfil chopper and leave the exclusion zone before the gas washed over you and killed you was incredible. And several missions within the faction structure lent into those moments through the different seasons. Perhaps my favorite ever DMZ mission was Exfil Tracker, where you were tasked with tagging 3 enemy-hailed exfil choppers with a radio transmitter. You couldn't call it in yourself, you had to wait for an enemy to come along and hit the exfil in order to tag those choppers. That led to some crazy moments, sometimes friendly ones, using comms to talk to the enemy team and let them know what you needed to do, and some of them letting you do that, and other times, before you could even open up comms, the enemy team sees you close by as a threat and immediately engages you. The physical extractions are so cool because they're a shining beacon of PvP to the entire rest of the lobby. They completely switch up what people were doing on the map, and it immediately raised the stakes. Now, obviously, DMZ didn't have much cool loot to extract, but if you did happen to have some cool stuff like 3-plate vests and different backpacks that you hadn't come in with, then the tension of wanting to leave with that stuff obviously played a part in that moment when you called in the extraction. Plus, it was cinematic as hell. Arc Raiders comes close to this with its elevator shaft extraction, but DMZ still clears for me. One thing I will say is that I wasn't a fan of the upgrade system to shorten the amount of time that it takes for a maxed out extraction chopper to arrive. You could level that up pretty fast, and in the end, most players had that enabled, and it meant that the amount of time that you needed to wait for a chopper to spawn and land was incredibly short. So I'd like to see that either removed as a mechanic or the impact of it lessened in a future iteration of DMZ. Who knows what Infinity Ward has planned for this, but I do hope they keep the physical extraction shoppers themselves because those things were just amazing. Final extractions as well is something that I mentioned in my tweet. Those of you who watch me stream DMZ, and that's a lot of you, last stream we had 1,500 of you watching, so thanks for the support, but those of you who do watch, you'll know that 90% of the time, we take the final extraction chopper because once again, it massively increases the tension. The ever-expanding gas zone, the threat of other enemy teams also racing to catch the last ticket out, the threat of you losing your loadout and potentially not completing missions that have an extraction condition on them, it all builds up into one final big moment, which is why we take it all the time. It's just there for the tension, and it creates cool gameplay. Okay, so those are the core elements that I think DMZ needs to retain, but now on to some elements that I think it needs to add and build upon in this next version. Number one is a proper economy. This is something that was immediately noticeable as missing from the original DMZ, and other extraction shooters that have sustained or come out since, the likes of Tarkov, Arena Breakout, Delta Force, Arc Raiders, and Marathon, they all have functioning economies that assign proper value to the items that you extract and then use in-game. This gives proper meaning to the extraction part of the entire experience, and it leans more heavily into the looting, the missions, the contracts, and the metagame overall, and it can somewhat decrease the reliance on pure PvP gameplay. Games like Arc Raiders have put more emphasis on this stuff than others, creating out-of-raid mechanics that purely incentivize looting, collecting, and then extracting what would otherwise be random items, and then rewarding players for doing that. Things like the Expedition system is a really cool implementation of this, taking items from the game's wider selection and setting targets for giving up a certain amount of these items in order to send off your expedition and get some cosmetic rewards for doing so. DMZ lacks that currently, and I think the next version really needs to implement that if it wants to create a sense of staying power and rebalance the experience between PvE and PvP. Now, I don't for one second think that a Call of Duty extraction shooter is ever going to reduce the presence of PvP, but the current DMZ lacks the emphasis on PvE in certain scenarios, so dialing that up a little bit would be pretty cool to see. I'd also like to see DMZ implement some proper base building functionality. This is again something that other extraction shooters already do very well, with the likes of Tarkov doing it from the very beginning, and others implementing various elements of it, like Arc Raider's workbench system that you can upgrade over time to not only unlock more useful items, but directly build them and then fill your stash with those things for future raids. Having a proper stash as well fits right into the base building conversation, and the current DMZ just doesn't have this in the way that it needs to be. Sure, you've got your contraband weapon stash and your key stash, but that's basically it. No way to store materials, rare items, nothing. The next DMZ needs a robust out-of-raid experience, that's for sure. And lastly, I think this version of DMZ really needs to channel some of the deeper, more meaningful missions of the later seasons. Something that DMZ did really well was the addition of the Koshé complex, and you'd unlock more secrets about DMZ and what's going on between all the different factions. There'd be deeper missions in there, and puzzles that you had to complete as well. This is something that other extraction shooters I don't think do very well, with Arc Raiders really coming to my mind. They have this amazing world that they've created, and I feel like the missions don't really do a good job of telling you the story of that world. I think DMZ could really step in and create an amazing lore that you'd want to explore. Now, exploration is obviously implied with an extraction shooter, but I think the missions should really lean into that. And DMZ did that in later seasons in this first iteration, so I hope we see more of that in the next version. The entire Modern Warfare game is set around this fictional, escalating conflict on the Korean Peninsula, a battle between the North and the South that draws in other world powers. So there's some incredible space there to tell some stories, and I hope DMZ gets a chance to do that. So as I said earlier, more details of the next version of DMZ will be dropping on June 7th at the Xbox Games Showcase. I'll be covering these details for you. I might even live stream the event, because on the Call of Duty website, it specifically states that we'll get additional details and gameplay-focused coverage. So maybe we see some gameplay on June 7th. Exciting times. Thanks for watching. Drop your predictions and excitements down below in the comments, and I'll catch you soon for more DMZ.